Gamar Chatima Tova. Welcome, everyone. Or Zarua Latzadikim. A light shines for the righteous. We come here with a mixture of trepidation, knowing that we stand before judgment, and at the same time, hopeful and ready for redemption, confident that forgiveness and renewal will be at hand. We begin on page 204 in our Machzorim, and we invite you to sing along, to lend your voice to this important gathering. Page 204. Witnesses. God says the Torah itself is a witness against us. Its mitzvot call out to us, reminding us of our obligations, of our breach, our covenant. And so as we call this court to order, we invite you all to please rise as we open the ark. Who can understand the source of our errors? Cleanse me of secret faults and restrain your servant from willful sins. May they not control me. Then shall I be innocent of wrongdoing, wholly clear of transgression. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, Adonai, my rock and my redeemer. By the authority of the court on high and by the authority of this court below, with divine consent and with the consent of this congregation, we grant permission to pray with those who have transgressed. Page 204 at the bottom.
ובשיבה של מטה על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים בשיבה של מעלה ובשיבה של על דעת המקום ועל דעת הקהל אנו מתירים להתפלל עם העבריינים.
Page 205.
Kol Nidre Vesare Vecharame Vekoname Vechinuye Vekinuse Ushavu Din darla udishtabala udeacharimna vedeasarna al nafshata Miyom Kippurim ad Yom Kippurim Amalenu Alenu letova Kul hon yicharat naveon Kul hon yehon sharan shevikin Shevitin Betelin mevotalin La sheririn Vela kayamin Nidra la nidre Ve'esarana la esare Ushevotana la
Din darna udish tabana udea charimna vidasar nal al nafshatana miyon kippurim ze Yom Kippurim haba aleinu lechochunya kulon icharat navehon kulon yehon shehiran shvikin shvitin betelin uvutalin la shiririn vela kayamin nidrana Sarana la sare au shuvuatana la Shavut.
entire congregation of the people Israel shall be forgiven, as well as the stranger who dwells among them, for all have erred. The middle of page 205.
ונסלח לכל הדת בני ישראל ולגר הגר בתוכם כי
V'nislach lechol adat b'nei Israel. God forgives all of the people of Israel, even the stranger in their midst, because all of us are not, none of us is blameless. I love this imagery. We come here absolutely exposed, vulnerable, ready to open our hearts to God, to be honest with ourselves, to do the work of cheshbon hanefesh, a self-accounting, to seek kapara, to seek atonement. And we assure ourselves by reminding God of God's own words. As Moses prayed, as befits your abundant love, please forgive this people's sin, just as you have always forgiven this people from the time of the exodus from Egypt until now. And there it says further, Adonai replied, I have forgiven as you have asked. Join us on the bottom of page 205.
Adonai,
We've made it another year, and here we are. The rabbis debate about when atonement happens on Yom Kippur. The Torah says that it is the day itself that atones. And so here we are in the day of Yom Kippur, and we should celebrate as though knowing with confidence that we have arrived. We have a lot of work ahead of us in the next 25 hours. But we come here confidently knowing that we are ready to do the work of teshuvah, of returning. And so we return year after year, and we thank God for the opportunity to be here once again. On the bottom of page 205, please join me in a recitation of Shechianu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Shechianu v'kiyamanu v'higyanu lazman hazeh. We now return the Torah scrolls to the arks. And while we do that, it's a good time to remind you that we will be standing a lot during during Yom Kippur, throughout the day, tomorrow, and into Ne'ilah. There'll be many opportunities to stand. They say standing's good for you. But if it doesn't feel good for you, you should know that you may sit, you must sit. And please take care of yourself and your health throughout the fast day. And so if you don't feel well and would like a little bit of assistance, we have some things for people to eat and drink as well. And that'll be the case as well tomorrow. And so as long as I'm talking about health and safety, it's also a good time to remind you that health and safety is everybody's responsibility, something that we share together. And the best way we can do that is to be aware, to be calm, to listen to those who are here professionally to keep us safe, but to use our own minds and awareness to know where the exits are in this building. They may be behind you, and they may be over here on this side. There are some behind the bima as well. And Bethany Lutheran has told us that in the event that we should have to leave the room, the place to gather is on the field to the west of the building. So thank you for that. We now come together as a community. We call upon one another to pray in the words of the Baruch Hu, calling on one another, calling and responding as one community. We remain standing as we're able on page 207. You may be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yibra marim mapodech sharim umitnun
Umavir yom, umevil laila, umavdil ben yom uven laila, Adonai tzavot shemo, El chai v'kayam, tamid imoch aleinu leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'aris
אהבת עולם בית ישראל אהבת תורה ומצוות וחוקים משפטים אותם למדת. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגע יומם ולילה ואהבתך אל תשים ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. We continue quietly on 209. ויאמר אל משה לאמור, דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת להם בסלון ציצית הכתב בהם נתן ציצית נפתי על תכנו והיום ציצית נתן בסלון כל מצוות בני ישראל נתן ולא תתברך לכם לכם אשר תנתנו לכם למען תזכרו ועשיתם כל חוקי ואתם תחשו לכם אני אומר לכם אשר רציתי אתכם מארץ מצרים ולכם אומר לכם
Adonai Elohechem Emet.
ואמונה כל זאת בקיים עלינו בידינו וזאת אנחנו ישראל עמו עבדינו. We continue quietly on 209. We'll join together in a moment on 210 in the middle of the page at the arrows.
ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל לחנו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נהדר בקודש נורא
You'll find the words for Hashkivenu, the words that we will sing, on page 211. You'll also find on page 7 of your service guides.
Ufros aleinu, sukat shalomcha. Ufros aleinu, sukat shalomcha. Ki
hope that you can hear your own voices and those of the people around you. We rise now as we come to page 212. We rise as we are able. Ki bayom hazeh, for on this day atonement shall be made for you to purify you from all your transgressions. In the presence of Adonai you shall be pure. Also a beautiful melody that I encourage you to sing along with.
Ki vayom hazeh yechaper alechem letaher etchem mikol chatotechem. Ki vayom hazeh yechaper alechem letaher etchem mikol chatotechem. Leave ויתקדש שמי רבה ועמד יפרח קירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן יהי שמירה לברך לעולם ועולמי יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה בריחו לילה ולילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירון מעלמה ואמרו אמן.
We remain standing as we're able on page 213, and we continue with our personal recitation of the Amidah, which goes through page 221. We begin the practice of confessionals of slichot, where we strike our chest as a sign of contrition. The Torah says in Parshat Nitzavim that God will cut away, it's Parshat Ekev actually, that God will cut away the hardening around our hearts, that literally God will circumcise our hearts. I prefer to think of the striking of the chest not so much as self-harm, but of a kind of tenderizing of the heart, allowing us to open ourselves to atonement and to renewal. So please take your time in Hebrew or in English, beginning on page 212. When you've completed your recitation of the Amidah, you're welcome to take a seat.
say shalom, shalom bimroma. Uyase shalom. Oh, say shalom, shalom bimroma. Uyase shalom. Uyase shalom. Shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Israel.
May be seated. Every year at Yom Kippur on Kol Nidre evening, HEA has a custom of inviting the president of our board of directors to offer words about the synagogue, about the year that's passed and the year ahead. Seth Davis is currently the president of the board of directors of HEA, and Lynn Geller is the immediate past president. Since Seth cannot be in two places at once, Lynn is graciously offering Seth's words tonight to us. So please give your attention to Lynn Geller.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'm here tonight to carry on the tradition of the immediate past president reading the president's Kol Nidre address here in Shir Chadash. I am very excited to be able to do this tonight. Now the words of Seth Davis. I am honored and humbled to be standing here before you today as president of the Hebrew Educational Alliance. I'm humbled by the history of this congregation, and I'm humbled by the challenges and opportunities we face in the future. We are in a remarkable time in the world. My talk tonight will focus primarily on ways change has come to us and sharing thoughts about the path we as a congregation need to explore in order to ensure our future remains as bright as our past. Our congregation has witnessed change before and succeeded many times. Here is just one example. Under the leadership of then President Gerard Radofsky, Executive Director Neil Price, Rabbi Dahlin, and Cantor Goldstein, HEA transformed from a financially struggling Orthodox shul on the west side to a thriving conservative synagogue on the east side, growing from 400 families to over 900 families. The changes required to make this happen weren't small things. What are the challenges we face now? Let's start with memberships or affiliations in general. Americans are less interested in organized religion, but it is actually bigger than that. Americans' focus on organizations in general has declined. It doesn't matter if you are a bowling league, a country club, a church, or Masonic lodge. The odds are that your membership numbers are down, and your participation is down even more than your membership. HEA is no different, as we have seen our first decline in membership in 2 decades. What is the cause of this general disaffiliation with member-based organizations? There isn't a definite answer, but many researchers point to 24/7 news cycles, streaming TV options, the internet's expansion as a source for almost everything, smartphones and smart devices. Virtually everything can be done on demand from your device. Just think about the number of things you can have delivered in as little as an hour, for which we barely need to leave the house. We also have services like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and text messages to thank for keeping us better connected. Parents have kids' activities filling schedules with little downtime for the youth or the parents. For many of us, Shabbat is an afterthought. The fastest growing part of the Jewish community are described as non-religious, which was 22% of the community just a few years ago, and I suspect this has only increased since then. Based on the Pew study, Rabbi Dan Moskowitz concluded, once Jews no longer identify themselves through the Jewish religion, it is highly unlikely they or their children ever will again. In short, when Jews walk away from shul, they don't come back. HEA will struggle if we follow the same model we've been following for the past 2 decades. Our membership's average age has risen steadily, partially due to younger members opting to stay away until at least after they marry, and more often until they have children entering preschool or religious school, if they join at all. If you are wondering where I am headed, it is actually quite simple. Our synagogue must become capable of bringing each of us a more personal connection, something we aren't finding online during the hours with our devices. Last year, the HEA board approved our strategic plan. I'm going to try and summarize this plan in just a few sentences, which is both important and impossible. Important because you need to understand what is in it for you, and you need to realize it will take a bit of time to happen. Our strategic plan is designed to improve our connections with each other in a real and meaningful way. Human connection or engagement, connecting in smaller groups, connecting on topics that are of interest to you through music, prayer, social action, social justice, and connections with Israel, we can find common interests, just like Shabbat clubs that Rabbi Grunwald spoke about on Rosh Hashanah. This is called relational Judaism, which means to inspire communities like the HEA, to engage with our members and connect them to Judaism and community in meaningful and lasting ways. We also know that we ask a lot of our staff to be the creators and implementers of change to a new relational model. Our staff has seen many changes in the past couple years. While none of us want to say goodbye to familiar faces as we embark on our next chapter of HEA, we believe our newest staff members will help us in many ways, bringing fresh ideas, new energy, and embracing the opportunity to make HEA stronger. One of the most common questions that has been asked is, when are we hiring a cantor? Good question. In May, HEA made a strong offer to cantor Benny Warshawski to join the HEA. He and his family opted not to join us, which was out of our control. So what is next? The clergy hiring season begins again in December. The rabbis will begin forming a committee just after the holidays conclude to engage in the process of bringing a musically talented and traditionally trained clergy member to the HEA. We have begun to develop a game plan for attracting and hiring the most talented person for the job as quickly as possible. The biggest surprise we encountered last year was the limited pool of qualified candidates. Qualified candidates, which reflects extraordinarily low graduation numbers from cantorial schools and changes in the way synagogues across the country are staffed. In the interim, the rabbis want to consider the best ways to influence our services for the positive prior to this new hire. One program they have been developing are weekends with musician in residence. These weekends would include traditional davening, classes, learning, and engagement with members of both services. I want to reiterate and dispel a rumor that is oft repeated. The rabbis and the board are fully committed to maintaining both the traditional and Shir Chadash services. Enhancing services and spiritual connection is an important part of the strategic plan. This does not mean wholesale changing melodies or services, but it does mean experimenting with ideas around bringing the most meaning to our worship. We are nearing the time when we are going to say goodbye to one of the all-time best. Neil Price has served with honor, distinction, respect, and care for almost 39 years at the HEA. He and Michelle have adventures awaiting them. I won't make tonight the chance to thank him for all he has done, since we'll be celebrating his legacy of service together as a community on February 9th, 2020. Neil's replacement, Laura Intfen, comes to us from Overland Park, Kansas, where she has led and helped transform Congregation Beth Torah. Laura and her husband Tim are moving to Denver for the opportunity for Laura to be the HEA's new CEO. This is a new title and comes with a changing job description that will allow us to shift responsibilities with the end goal of serving our congregation well into the future. Laura will take on much of the direct supervision of the senior staff. Sherry Grinsteiner stepped into an important role of religious school director in mid-January, and she approached her new role with class and focus. She has been putting in place a new culture of engagement with our youth. She continues to do an excellent job as ritual director, both leading and coordinating volunteers. Thank you also to Fred Karp for his incredible generosity with his volunteer time with coordinating service leadership as well. Jen Zucker has been a wonderful addition to our education and youth team, working long hours, supporting programs, and helping with the launch of the Mensch Academy. The Mensch Academy is designed to give more meaning to the B'nai Mitzvah journey and is led by Jacob Chattenover. We are also excited to welcome our new youth group director, Emily Silverman, who joined us last week. Yoshua, Yosh Hooper, our new high school educator, has also just joined the staff. Be sure your children and grandchildren take advantage of the amazing programs with this great team of young people. Jody Meyer has been in her Director of Operations role for 15 months and done an incredible job. She has brought discipline, process, and production to the staff. After the Tree of Life incident in Pittsburgh last year, Jody's responsibilities adjusted to include meaningful support for security. Speaking of security, you have likely noticed many changes in security protocol this year during the holidays. HEA has made many investments in security during the past year. A very special thank you to the following volunteers for their support: Jeff Grazi, Jeff Cohen, Mark Alpert, Yuri Cohen, and Brian and Susan Schiff. Thank yous would not be complete without acknowledging the countless hours of volunteering for Mark Samuelson and his entire team of greeters each Shabbat morning and throughout the holidays. Shira Teed was recently named our first engagement director, a job that is a key part of our strategic plan. During her interviews, she proved she was the best candidate for the role and is excitedly embarking in her new job, which is designed to build the connection for each of us with HEA. James McKeon, head of communications, continues to be a steady presence and a willing partner in so many efforts. Anna Zantivani has grown into her new role as Neil's assistant and developed fantastic technical skills. Joyce Perlmutter and Gail Kessel provide us all with warm welcomes and continuity in our office. Leah Marcus continues to be an excellent financial resource for Neil and the Finance Committee. Our entire janitorial team takes on jobs big and small and helps us keep the building clean and functional for so many different uses. The HEA preschool continues to shine under the leadership of Rebecca Paradis, Jamie Lambert, and Danny Wynn. We have an incredible group of teachers that come to work every day, passionate about educating our youth and helping inspire Jewish values. This past year included multiple milestones worthy of note, including Rabbi and Tammy Dahlin's 25th anniversary celebration, a huge technology leap forward as we moved to a cloud-based architecture and adopted a new software platform called Shul Cloud. If you haven't logged in yet, and I know many of you are on your devices many times during the day, but not tonight, and if you haven't downloaded the app, please do it. It is the easiest source of information available about the HEA, including a membership directory. Our website also underwent a needed upgrade. Sid Methner helped oversee a reimagination of our men's group this summer, now known as the HEA Bros, which included adoption of new bylaws and election of officers. Now, you can imagine that Seth could do these next few sentences much better than I can. For the second year in a row, the Michigan softball team, led by the Wild veteran Bob Green, won the Denver Jewish softball title, bringing the famed Silver Cup back to HEA for the 11th time. For any of you questioning if you are too old to play softball, be sure to ask Bob how old he is. I mean, how young he is. HEA had three of the top 4 spots in the league for the second year in a row. We should all be thankful for the countless volunteer time the HEA board gives. A special thank you to the executive board, Sid Methner, Karen Blank, Bruce Lykoff, Barbara Carroll, Jeff Greenstein, and Jill Levy for all that you do. You all bring unique talents that I'm so appreciative of. Very nicely, Seth says, I could not do this job without the support and counsel of our immediate past president, Lynn Geller. The most important thank yous must go to Seth's wife, Bonnie, and his kids, Brendan and Aviva. You all supported this decision for me to take on this role, and I appreciate your ongoing love, cheerleading, and support every day. To my parents here this evening visiting from Buffalo, New York, I'm wondering if you remember how ready I was to swear off Judaism after my bar mitzvah, and probably before it too. Thank you for raising me with great values, Jewish and non-Jewish. I love you, and I'm happy you are here tonight. Now I have to step out of role for a minute. Let me take this opportunity to thank my husband, Bill. You stood by me, listened to me, and always provided me with strength I needed while president. A big thank you for joining me here at Shir Chadash tonight. Back to Seth's concluding words. I want to leave you with a message from the great Jewish philosopher Winston Churchill. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. So my big ask of you tonight is, please don't drift away as we embark on efforts to re-engage our community. Instead, ask about how you can be a part of it. We want each of you to be a part of continuing to build on our rich 85-year legacy. Wishing you a Gemar Chatima Tova, have an easy and meaningful fast.
Yasher Koach. And I want to particularly thank Lynn for her 3 years in the presidency that led to this moment, because a lot of what she spoke about tonight, the innovation, the change, her expertise in management drove Rabbi Don and I forward, sometimes drove us a little crazy, but drove us forward to get to the point that we are today, and it's a very exciting place that we are. And so thank you, and thanks Seth for picking up that legacy and running with it. So thank you. So did you get a new house? Huh? Huh? Rabbi, did you get a new house? This is what I heard at the supermarket last Friday as I was rushing. I was wearing earphones, and I hear somebody say, Rabbi, did you buy a new house? This woman came up to me and she said, Rabbi, you gave a lovely sermon, but you didn't finish telling the story. I want to know how it turned out. You didn't tell us if you bought a new house. It's funny what people will fixate on, you know, and it goes to show that people love a good story, you know? Everybody loves a good story, and it made me laugh, of course, because the story about falling through the ceiling and crashing in the dining room, of course, that was a rhetorical device, a little hook to introduce my topic. My Rosh Hashanah sermon really wasn't about my house. It was about your house, right? It was a sermon about imagining your home as a place for meaningful gathering, and how gathering on Shabbat can teach us to gather across difference in ways that can change our lives and heal our splintered world. In reality, the sermon was about this house, though. Our house. Not literally this one, but our congregational community, our synagogue. Nonetheless, that congregant was right. I didn't finish the story. And in a sense, then, I didn't really finish the sermon. I left something out. I talked about the moment that I realized I wanted to move to a new house. But that was only part of the story. You really can't talk about leaving for a new place without dealing with the challenges and opportunities presented by change, loss, and transition. This is the season for change and growth. We call it tshuva, often translated as repentance. Tshuva is much more than a remedy for sin. The word tshuva comes from the Hebrew root meaning returning or responding. The thrust of this season, the kinetic movement, is one of turning, of returning, of turning back on ourselves to look at our lives. And then simultaneously, it propels us forward. It's a movement towards the future, resolved to do better than in the year that passed. But change is hard. Behavioral scientists will tell us that people will tolerate an unsatisfying situation for a very long time, even though they consciously express a desire for change. We all know that. It's hard to change. How people make changes in their lives and how communities and societies change, that's complex. But there are two key phases, two key turns that happen. The first is leave-taking. Essentially, it's how we say goodbye, right? The story about falling through the ceiling represented that tipping point for me when the status quo was no longer acceptable. Yet that's not really what affects change. Because even desired change evokes fear and anxiety about the unknown. Yeah, there was the moment when I decided we got to get out of this place, but then it got really scary, right? What people fear is not change, but rather people grieve for what they perceive they are losing. In order to be prepared to depart where we are, We have to allow ourselves to express grief for what was, or what could have been but wasn't. Believe me, I know a little bit about grief. But like I told you, this sermon's not about me. And this home, HEA, as Lynn spoke Seth's words, is different than it used to be. Some of the people we love have moved on. And there are also new faces at Kiddush and around the office. It's true that big new things are on the horizon, as Seth shared with us tonight. But before we can get excited about what's new, we have to grieve a little bit for what was. And in the spirit of this season of reflection and repentance, I think it's worth saying that we have not done enough to acknowledge and honor the sadness of bidding farewell to beloved members of our HEA community. And we need to do more to give voice to those feelings. So where can we look for wisdom about how we respond when the home that has felt so familiar to us needs to change? As a people, we have a rich tradition, a narrative of change, of movement, of finding a home, losing a home, and seeking new homes. From Abraham's journey to a land unknown, to the enslavement of our ancestors in Egypt and the liberation, the Exodus, and the journey to the Promised Land, yearning for home is a central theme in Judaism. We can learn most, perhaps, from our most traumatic loss of all time. In the year 70 CE, the Roman Empire destroyed our home, our Beit Mikdash, our temple, slaughtered hundreds of thousands of our people, and exiled the rest outside of our homeland. We were a people without a home. But out of the rubble of destruction, our ancient sages reimagined Judaism. They gathered to dream of ways to keep the covenant alive without a temple. What might our ancestors' experience teach us about how we leave one sense of home and establish a new one? This brings us to the second and perhaps most crucial phase in transitions, the point at which you begin to imagine the future, the point at which you begin to dream. When Melanie and I were starting our process of looking at homes, we did so with some trepidation, and we didn't take the children with us. We'd go see a house, and if we liked it, we'd come home and we'd tell them about it. And my daughter would fold her arms and do her breast impersonation of a teenager and says, "I'm not moving. I'm not moving." She really didn't want to move. And telling her about moving only made it worse. Talking about moving only made her more anxious. It turns out we went about it all wrong. We rarely do people a favor when we withhold information, thinking that we will spare them hard feelings. It was only when we started taking the kids along with us, that their attitudes started to shift a little bit, slowly. We visited a home, and the kids ran in. They raced to the bedrooms to pick out which one would be their own, fighting over who got which one. They started to talk about, well, the bed can go over here, and maybe my desk can go over there. They talked about which room would be best for making forts. My children still make forts. And they talked about where the basketball court would go. They began to place themselves in that space in their mind's eye. The same is true for our community, our congregation. We make the same mistake that virtually every organization does. We've avoided talking about the future because we fear the anxiety such conversations will produce. Tonight, Lynn mentioned a strategic plan. It might be the first time you've heard about it. And, if you have trouble sleeping at night, I recommend you read it. It's excellent. It is a beautiful document, but it has not become really owned by this congregation because we haven't talked about it. This sermon is an invitation to dream. Guided by our values, grounded in our rich history, we need to kindle a desire to make Judaism relevant and meaningful in our lives for the future. Does it feel scary to talk that way? It should. Usually anything worth taking a risk on is going to make us feel that way. It's going to make us a little uncomfortable. We're going to try things. We're going to listen. We're going to gather in groups to create new initiatives, explore ideas. Some of them will adopt, some of them will fail. It will bring up feelings. It will bring up anxiety over change. The challenge is to turn that anxiety into excitement, to turn fear into an opportunity to learn. The rabbis who salvaged Judaism out of the ruins of Jerusalem took a great leap of imagination. The temple in Jerusalem was the center of the universe in the Jewish perspective. It was the conduit, the physical location of God in the world. How could it be destroyed? Following the destruction of the temple, our sages made a bold claim. They asserted that Judaism no longer required a fixed sanctuary, no longer required a temple. Despite evidence to the contrary, God was not gone. Our covenant with God had not been abrogated. Rather than being confined to one home, God would now be found throughout the world. Aye mekom kevodo kevodo male olam, right? God pervades all of the world, all of our houses. We don't need just one house. Shimon the Righteous was one of the last of the great assembly, we are told, in the 2nd century compendium of rabbinic wisdom known as Pirkei Avot. Hu haya omer, he used to say, Al shlosha dvarim ha'olam omed, the world stands upon 3 things, upon Torah, upon prayer, and upon acts of loving kindness. We all know the summer camp version, Al shlosha devarim, right? You remember that one from camp, right? But this is in fact not a silly little song. This is an audacious assertion. What Shimon HaTzadik, a survivor of the destruction of Jerusalem himself, is saying is that the world upon which Judaism stood, the world that was destroyed, that's not gone. Judaism is not gone. The Jewish world now rests on 3 things, on Torah, on worship, on avodah, on service really, and on loving kindness. It rests on distilling the wisdom of Torah through interpretation and learning, passing that learning on from generation to generation. It rests on people coming together to worship, pray, and celebrate, offering up the words of their heart rather than animal sacrifices. And it rests on doing justice in the world, acting with mercy toward other human beings. This is how we begin to transition and adopt change. We have to confront our sadness for what we leave behind, but we don't really begin to change until we start to imagine an alternative future. If our sages 2,000 years ago, in the wake of the most cataclysmic event in Jewish history, could reimagine home, shouldn't we be able to do the same? We replaced the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy of Holies, the House of Holiness, with Beit Knesset, with the House of Gathering, or in Greek, synagogue. But in Hebrew, Beit Knesset, a house of gathering. Over the centuries, the Beit Knesset became a center of Jewish life and the home that Shimon HaTzadik dreamed of, a place of Torah, avodah, and gimilut chasadim. So let's dream a little bit together. And in the months ahead, let's gather together to have these conversations, to dream about the kind of home we want as our synagogue, a place for pursuing wisdom in Torah, for inspiring souls through prayer and spiritual practices, and finding meaning in acts of righteousness and loving kindness. The questions we need to ask ourselves, so let's take them. Torah. How will HEA be a resource for better living through the wisdom and practice of Judaism? How will we use the tools of Torah to make ourselves better people? And how can we make that wisdom relevant for the world today? Judaism needs to speak to our real lived experience, and Judaism needs to be a good that we share with our friends and neighbors. A wisdom tradition that can help to repair our world. Avodah, service, worship. How will we as a congregation gather with friends and community to celebrate, to mourn, to rejoice, to give thanks, to sing and dance and experience the richness of life in the company of others? Where else in our world are we invited to do that, if not in the synagogue? In short, what will we do to grow our souls? The third pillar upon which the world stands is Gimilut Chasadim, acts of kindness. So we need to answer the question, how will we make our synagogue home? Make our synagogue home and our families' own homes welcome places for everyone seeking to engage in Judaism? And how will our synagogue contribute to a world of justice and compassion? In other words, what are we about? And it doesn't mean we all have to be about the same thing, but we need to be about important things. We may not do it all together, we may do it in small groups, but a synagogue has to be about something relevant in the world. When we can answer these questions, we will be the spirited, engaging, empowered community we imagine ourselves to be. So I didn't tell the whole story. We are indeed moving. We're looking forward to making a change. In many ways, the place we're going to is much like the previous one and serves some of the same purposes. But things will be different now, and we have choices to make about how we want to live. Grief is starting to give way to hope and imagination. Not everyone with whom we started the journey is still with us, and yet we continue to welcome in new people and grow our sense of family. We're determined to make our home a place of human connection and transformational gathering, a source of wisdom and inspiration for living a more meaningful life and growing our souls. It will be a place pulsing with life, color, excitement, and joy. It will be a home that embraces us in times of need, in moments of grief or defeat. It will be a home where we share what we have with others and dream together about a better future. Get the picture? Does that sound like a lot to expect from a nice little 4-bedroom house that was nicely remodeled? It is, because that's not what I'm talking about. That's because, as I told you before, I'm not talking about my house. I'm talking about your house, your home. I'm talking about this synagogue and our ability to dream of its future. We are opening the days now, we are just in the opening days of the year 5780. 20 years from now, what do we want our shul to look like at the turn of the 59th century? I kind of like that. It's going to be the 59th century. What's the story that we want to tell in 5800 about the choices we made in 5780 that led to a renewed and revitalized HEA for a new generation of Jews seeking meaningful engagement with one another and the wisdom of Torah? As we form the intentional kind of gatherings that I spoke about on Rosh Hashanah, some of those gatherings will be about asking these questions, about getting together with other people to dream about what this community can be about. So I guess I did it again. I didn't really finish the story. That's because it isn't my story alone to tell. And the story isn't finished. It's up to each of us to tell our story and collectively for our congregation to write its next chapter. Gamar Chatimat Tova. May we be written in the book of life for a good year. Shana Tova. We now continue with, as we approach Slichot and the Viduis, on page 223. May our supplications rise up at evening, our pleas arrive with the dawn. Our songs transform the dusk. Please join me. May our voices rise up at evening, our righteous acts arrive with the dawn. Our redemption transform the dusk. May our suffering rise up at evening, our forgiveness arise with the dawn. Our purity transform the dusk. May our prayers rise up at evening, coming to you with the dawn, transforming us at dusk. Page 223.
Ya'ale tachanuneinu me'erev ve'yavo Shabbateinu miboker.
We turn now to page 226. And we open the ark as we recite God's 13 attributes. God, you are patient. You are known as the source of mercy. You taught the way of repentance. Today and every day call to mind the wonder of your compassion and mercy toward the children of those you love. Turn toward us in mercy, for you are the source of mercy.
Adonai, Adonai,
וסלחת לעווננו לחטאתנו ונחלתנו.
Salach lanu avinu ki chatanu, machalanu malkeinu ki pashanu, ki ata Adonai tov v'salach v'rav chesed lechol korecha. On the bottom of 226, please join me in English in the bottom left. Forgive us, our Creator, for we have sinned. Pardon us, our Sovereign, for we have transgressed. For you, Adonai, are kind and forgiving. You act generously to all who call you. You may be seated briefly as the ark is closed. This section of the service appeals both to the nature of God and to our nature. God's nature being fundamentally forgiving and kind, slow to anger, and our nature being fragile and finite, like the clay in a potter's hands. Page 227. Please join me on the left-hand side responsively. And we'll read the Hebrew as well. The refrain is Labrit habet ve'al tefen leyetzer. As clay in the hand of the potter, who thickens or thins it at will, so are we in your hand, guardian of love. Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser. Labrit habet ve'al tefen leyetzer. As stone in the hand of the mason, who preserves or breaks it at will, so are we in your hand, God of life and death. Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser. Labrit habet ve'al tefen leyetzer. As iron in the hand of the blacksmith, who forges or withdraws it at will, so are we in your hand, support of the poor. Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser. Labrit habet ve'al tefen leyetzer. As the helm in the hand of the sailor, who holds the course or abandons it at will, so are we in your hand, good and forgiving God. Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser. Labrit habet ve'al tefen leyetzer. As glass in the hand of the glazier, who shapes or melts it at will, so are we in your hand, pardoner of sin and transgression. Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser. Labrit habet ve'al tefen leyetzer. As cloth in the hand of the draper, who drapes or twists it at will, so are we in your hand, righteous God. Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser. Labrit habet ve'al tefen leyetzer. As silver in the hand of the smelter, who alloys or refines it at will, so are we in your hand, healer of wounds. Recall your covenant, do not heed the accuser. Labrit habet ve'al tefen leyetzer. We now turn to page 232. And we rise once again as the ark is soon opened. God, sovereign, who sits on a throne of mercy, acting with unbounded grace, forgiving the sins of your people one by one as each comes before you, generously forgiving sinners and pardoning transgressors, acting charitably with every living thing. Do not repay them with their misdeeds. We're in the middle of page 232.
El horet lanu lomar shalosh esrei zachor lanu hayom barit shalosh esrei kemo shehadata le'anav mikedem kemo shekatuv vayered Adonai ve'anan v'yityatzev imosham vayikra b'shem Adonai vayavor Adonai al panav vayikra Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Hanun, Erech Apayim, V'Rach Chesed V'Emet, Notzer Chesed La'alafim, Noseh
וסלחת לעווננו ולחטאותינו נחלתנו. סלח לנו אבינו כי חטאנו, מחל לנו מלכנו כי פשענו. כי אתה אדוני טוב וסלח, ורב חסד לכל קוראיך. סלח נא לעוון העם הזה כגודל חסדך וכאשר נסעת לעם הזה ממצרים ועד הנה, ושם נאמר, ויאמר אדוני, סלחתי כדבריך. We turn now to page 233. You'll find the words based on the traditional liturgy in your service guide on page 7, Lev Tahor, as we intersperse that with Shema Kolenu. השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה, חדש ימינו כקדם. אל תשליכנו מלפניך, ורוח קודשך אל תיקח ממנו. אל תשליכנו לעת זקנה, ככלות כוחנו אל תעזבנו. We join together now in the words responsively in English on the left-hand side, 233, Hear Our Voice.
Hear our voice, Adonai our God, be kind and have compassion for us. Willingly and lovingly
We
accept
accept our
our
prayer.
prayer.
Turn us toward you, Adonai, and we will return to you. Make your days seem fresh as they were.
Do not cast us away from you. Take not your holy presence from us.
Do not cast us away as we grow old. Do not desert us as our energy wanes. You can follow the words for Lev Tahor in the service guide on page 7.
Lev tahor brali Elohim veruach nachon chadesh vekirbi. Lev tahor brali Elohim veruach nachon chadesh vekirbi. Al tashlicheni milfanecha veruach kodshecha al tikach mimeni. Al tashlicheni milfanecha veruach kodshecha al tikach mimeni. Hashiva li sason yishecha veruach nediva tismecheni. Hashiva li sason yishecha veruach nediva tismecheni. Lev tahor brali Elohim veruach nachon chadesh bekirbi. Lev tahor brali Elohim veruach nachon chadesh bekirbi.
We now close the ark as we turn to page 234, but we remain standing as we are able.
Ki anu amecha ve'ata Eloheinu anu vanecha ve'ata avinu anu avadecha ve'ata Adonenu anu kehalecha ve'ata chelekeinu anu nachatecha ve'ata goraleinu anu tzom lecha ve'ata ro'einu anu charecha ve'ata notreinu anu ve'ulatecha ve'ata yoteinu anu raitecha ve'ata doteinu anu segulatecha ve'ata koreinu anu amecha ve'ata malkeinu anu onirecha ve'ata mamireinu.
We now turn to page 235 for the confessional, the short confessional each letter representing a different transgression, representing all transgressions contained in this prayer. Please rise as you're able. Page 235. Ay, 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 we have sinned from your goodly laws and commandments, but it has not profited us. Surely you are in the right with respect to all that comes upon us, for you have acted faithfully, but we have been in the wrong. Please join me on page 235 in the English, labeled Bet at the bottom of the page. Our God and God of our ancestors, forgive and pardon our sins on this day of atonement. Blot out and disregard our sins and errors. Subdue our instincts so that they may serve you. Bend our stiffness so that we turn to you. Renew our passion for observing your ordinances. Circumcise our hearts to love and revere your name. As it is written in your Torah, then Adonai your God will circumcise your heart and the hearts of your offspring to love Adonai your God with all your heart and all your soul, that you may live. We turn now to page 237 for the extended recitation of Al-Chet, and you're welcome to remain standing as you're able. Page 237. We start with responsive reading in English, led by Rebecca.
We have sinned against you willingly and unwillingly.
And we have sinned against you through hardening our hearts.
We have sinned against you thoughtlessly.
And we have sinned against you in idle chatter.
We have sinned against you through sexual immorality.
And we have sinned against you openly and in private.
We have sinned against you knowingly and deceitfully.
And we have sinned against you by the way we talk.
We have sinned against you by defrauding others.
And we have sinned against you in our innermost thoughts.
We have sinned against you through forbidden trysts.
And we have sinned against you through empty confessions.
We have sinned against you by scorning parents and teachers.
And we have sinned against you purposely and by mistake.
We have sinned against you by resorting to violence.
And we have sinned against you by public desecration of your name.
We have sinned against you through foul speech.
And we have sinned against you through foolish talk.
We have sinned against you through pursuing the impulse to evil.
And we have sinned against you wittingly and unwittingly together. For all these sins, forgiving God, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement. I invite you to continue in Hebrew or in English. Ve'al kulam Elohai שחטאנו לפניך
בחזה, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בחפת שוחד.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בלצון, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בלשון הרע, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך במשא ומתן, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך במאכל ובמשתה. חטא שחטאנו לפניך, חטא שחטאנו לפניך.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בעיניים רמות, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בעזות מצח. ועל כולם אלוהי סליחות, סלח לנו וחנו
Again in English on the left, 238. We have sinned against you by throwing off all restraint, and we have sinned against you by rashly judging others. We have sinned against you by plotting against others, and we have sinned against you through selfishness. And we have sinned against you through superficiality, and we have sinned against you through stubbornness. We have sinned against you by rushing to do evil, and we have sinned against you through gossip. We have sinned against you through empty promises, and we have sinned against you through baseless hatred. We have sinned against you by betraying trust, and we have sinned against you by succumbing to confusion. For all these sins, forgiving God, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement. Ve'al kulam Elohai selichot, selach lanu mechanu Remain standing as we're able as we open the ark on page 243 for Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Elanu lechelata. Avinu Malkeinu,
Join me reading responsibly on the left-hand side of the page. Avinu Malkeinu, we have sinned in your presence. Avinu Malkeinu, act toward us kindly in accord with your name. Avinu Malkeinu, annul every harsh decree against us. Avinu Malkeinu, frustrate the plots of our enemies. Avinu Malkeinu, rid your covenanted people of disease, war, hunger, captivity, and destruction. Avinu Malkeinu, do not look toward our sins and transgressions, blot them out. Avinu Malkeinu, send complete healing to the sick among your people.
Remember us favorably.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us for good in the book of life.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of redemption.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of sustenance.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of merit.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of forgiveness.
You may join me in the Hebrew bold letters in the middle of the page. Avinu Malkeinu, Hachsirenu b'tshvash lema lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Shlach Rifua Shlema Lecholei Amecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Zachrenu B'zikaron Tov Lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Kadvenu B'Sefer Chaim Tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, Kadvenu B'Sefer Geula V'Yeshua. Avinu Malkeinu, Kadvenu B'Sefer Parnasa V'Chalkala. Avinu Malkeinu, Kadvenu B'Sefer Zechuyot. Avinu Malkeinu, Kadvenu B'Sefer Sechila U'Mechila. We continue in the English.
Avinu Malkeinu, cause our salvation to flourish soon.
Avinu Malkeinu, cause your people Israel to be exalted.
Avinu Malkeinu, raise up your anointed with strength.
Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, accept our prayer willingly and lovingly.
Avinu Malkeinu, na'al tishreinu rekam el fanech.
Avinu Malkeinu, remember that we are but dust. Avinu Malkeinu, do this for the sake of those who are martyred for your holy name.
Avinu Malkeinu, selaman.
Avinu Malkeinu, do this for the sake of those who went through fire and water to sanctify your holy name.
Avinu Malkeinu, do this for your sake, if not for ours.
Avinu Malkeinu, have mercy on us, answer us, for our deeds are insufficient. Deal with us charitably and lovingly and redeem us.
Avinu Malkeinu,
The ark is closed and we remain standing. 245.
Yitkadal ve'yitkadal shemei Rabban. Be'alma divra kiruteh ve'yamlich malchuteh. B'chayechon uvyomechon u'chayetecho beit Yisrael. Bagala uvizman kariv ve'imeru amen. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabban mevarach le'olam olamei omaya. Yitbarach ve'yishal
Page 246. We remain standing.
Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latek tula lioseh breshit, shelo asanu k'lei harasot, velo samanu mishmechot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim umishachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu.
Shemot shamayim v'yosed haaretz, Moshe v'karo b'shamayim ima'ah. Moshe כתוב בתורה, טוב וידעת היום והשבות האלה. כן, אגב, כי לך תקרא כל ברך תשבע כל לשון לפניך אלוהים.
כי אדוני הוא האלוהים
Mourner's Kaddish is on page 247. We remember most poignantly at this time of year those that are not around the holiday table. In fact, the ritual of Yizkor originates in Yom Kippur. And so it's a particularly poignant time for us to remember our loved ones. And I invite those who are reciting Kaddish and those for whom it is your custom to remain standing, page 247. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divra kirutei ve'amlich malchutei. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei l'chol Beit Yisrael. Bagalav v'zman kariv ve'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam olmei maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei kudsha brichu. Le'ela le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata. Tushvechata v'nechemata. Tamiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. You may be seated for just a moment. I want to remind you to please check your service guides and information from the synagogue for details about services, childcare, and other activities going on tomorrow. Services at Shir Chadash will start at 9:30 tomorrow morning here at Bethany, and 9 a.m. at the traditional service, with the sermon at both services roughly at 11:30 and Yizkor roughly at noon. We will not be returning here after Shacharit. The remainder of our services for Yom Kippur are at the HEA at 4:30 p.m. Mincha, 6:15 Ne'ilah, and Shofar is actually a little bit before 7:30. So come for Ne'ilah and hear the Shofar, and we'll conclude our fast together tomorrow. We'll conclude our service now with a closing song appropriate to the season from Psalm 27, which you'll find on page 248, about 7 lines down. Achat sha'alti, I ask one thing of God, to dwell in the house of God all the days of my life, to behold God's beauty and visit in God's sanctuary. And indeed, we will be visiting God's sanctuary for many hours tomorrow. So let's sing together and wish each other a good evening, a meaningful fast. Page 248.
Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai ota avakesh. Achat sha'alti me'et Adonai ota avakesh. Shir
Gamar Chatimat Tova, may we be written in the book of life for a good year.